Good afternoon and welcome to the September 19th meeting of the Fargo Human Relations Commission. I'm Barry Nelson, Chair of the Commission, and I'm going to ask each person at our, first I am going to officially welcome that we have two new members that are seated with us today, and I want to warmly welcome Adam Martin on my right, and on my left, Cody Severson. Welcome to the Fargo Human Relations Commission. We're excited to have you here. I'm just going to make a mention of that, is that we had a process, a very prolonged process of taking applications and going through a vetting and interviewing process and actually making the final recommendation to the mayor, who made that decision, and then the city commission approved it. But the delightful thing about what has occurred with our process is we had 35 applications for the Fargo Human Relations Commission. And so that, I think, is a really great indication of the level of interest in being involved in public policy and in our community, and specifically in our commission here. So that was really exciting to be able to go through that kind of process. So with that, though, I'm going to ask, starting on my right, John, if we introduce ourselves here at the bench.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm John Strand. I'm not a voting member of the commission, but I'm the liaison from the Fargo City Commission to the Human Relations Commission.
Thank you. I'll just let you introduce yourself again after I introduce you.
I'm Adam Martin. Okay.
Cheryl Schafel, commission member.
Matora Alier, commission member.
Rachel Hoffman. Leticia Hilrud, member.
And Abdi Wali Sharif, commission member.
Hamida Dakane, who was missing for 5 months, but a member.
Cody Severson, member.
Let's just be officially known. We have 100% attendance at this meeting today. So bravo, bravo. And Hamida, welcome back. It is so great to have you.
Thank you.
Great. You're always good to have you in the tour. Were you out of the country?
No,
Okay.
surgery.
Yes. Oh, yes. Welcome back, Mature, after having shoulder surgery. That's a significant kind of thing. You're way too young for that, but I heard it was because of some shenanigans that you. So,
Yes.
youthful shenanigans. So we have before us an agenda. So I would first ask that there be an indication of approval or amendment of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Thanks, Rachel.
Second that.
Second, thank you very much. All those in approve of the amendment or the agenda indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we also have minutes from our August 15th meeting. Same indication. Anybody wish to make the motion to approve the minutes?
I move a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Abdulwali?
I'll second.
Leticia, thank you. Is there any discussion or additions to the minutes before us? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. We have a presentation today from the High Plains Fair Housing. Delighted to have, in addition to Angie Erlacher, a staff person with Fair Housing, Michelle Ridds, who is the executive director. So welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. Angie's going to give a short presentation, and then I have some kind of detailed case stories that I can share with you.
All right. So our mission at High Plains Fair Housing Center is to strengthen communities and to ensure equal access to housing across North Dakota. And we accomplish this through training, education, enforcement, and advocacy. Both state and federal fair housing law requires housing-related transactions to be free of unlawful discrimination. Nearly all rentals, sales, lending, and insurance transactions related to housing are covered. Federal law prohibits housing discrimination based on race. Oh, I forgot I had this. There we go. Race, color, sex, national origin, religion, the presence of children in the household, and physical or mental disability. And in North Dakota, our laws also prohibit housing discrimination based on age, marital status, and receipt of public assistance. There continues to be evidence that housing discrimination exists in the state, particularly against people with disabilities, Native Americans, New Americans, LGBTQ individuals, and families with children. The evidence uncovered by a 2015 analysis of impediments released by the North Dakota Department of Commerce showed certain trends, including failure to make reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities, discriminatory advertising, lending discrimination against Native American and Hispanic applicants, discrimination based on receipt of public assistance, and lack of understanding of fair housing law and policy. Recently, High Plains Fair Housing conducted an audit to investigate housing discrimination in the LGBTQ population. And this audit found that transgender and gender nonconforming individuals were experiencing high levels of discrimination in North Dakota. At High Plains Fair Housing, our intake specialists work directly with clients to obtain the housing they need. They also help remedy adverse situations through landlord mediation, and if necessary, they help assist clients through the administrative complaint process. We also provide fair housing education and outreach to housing consumers, housing industry groups, and local governments. This work includes conducting presentations and trainings, producing and distributing fair housing materials, participating in panel discussions, and being a resource for housing discrimination questions. We also partner with agencies and organizations across the state to promote fair housing policies and practices in North Dakota. Finally, when warranted, we investigate situations where housing discrimination may have occurred through our testing program. Discrimination found through our testing program can be used to assist clients in their housing discrimination complaints, or we can use it in an organizational complaint with the goal to end discriminatory housing practices. High Plains Fair Housing Center works all across the state of North Dakota, including a considerable amount of work in Fargo. So during our first quarter, which ran from May 6th through July 31st, our office assisted 15 Fargo clients in addressing their fair housing issues. And we trained 51 Fargo area landlords, sent our newsletter to approximately 500 people in the Fargo area, and conducted 12 Fargo area tests based on national origin and race, disability, and reasonable accommodations for persons with mental health issues. Discrimination in housing often involves disparate treatment, so people in protected classes are treated differently from other people. People of a certain race may be told that no apartments are available or steered into particular buildings. Someone with children in the home may be charged a higher rent. Someone with a disability may be told that they cannot make reasonable modifications to their apartment so they can fully enjoy their unit. Another key part of the Fair Housing Act, though, is the protections that come from disparate impact theory. If a housing authority, rental property, a lender, or anyone else on the business side of housing transactions creates policies that have a disparate impact on protected classes, those policies can be a violation of the Fair Housing Act. For example, a property owner may decide to try to reduce crime around their building by setting a limit on the number of times emergency services can visit a unit. 911 calls to the unit are tracked and considered a lease violation after a certain number. Such a policy is applied equally to everyone in the building, yet the policy has a disproportionate adverse effect on certain groups of people, including women and people with disabilities. When such a policy is in place, women in domestic violence situations may have to decide if calling 911 for their own protection is worth risking their housing. A person with a disability could lose housing for needing emergency services too many times. Some rental agencies create policies stating that their tenants need to work full-time. Such a policy, even as it is applied to everybody, adversely impacts multiple groups of people, including veterans and persons with disabilities whose income may come from other sources other than just a job. Some lending companies have policies that allow their loan officers to overcharge consumers at the loan officer's discretion. And this is a policy that can lead to women, minorities, and people with disabilities being charged more for mortgages. Being able to bring forward a charge of discrimination based on disparate impact is a vital civil liberty. It is a key part of the Fair Housing Act's goal of integrating communities. Our current administration, however, is attempting to make such cases incredibly difficult to win by shifting nearly all the burden of proof to the plaintiffs who are fighting the discrimination. HUD's proposed changes also seek to make profits a legitimate defense against disparate impact. So victims of discrimination would have to prove that a company could make at least as much money without discriminating. And this puts company profits over people. HUD is accepting public comments about their proposed changes. And I'm here to ask you today if you, as active members of your community, as either yourself or collectively through your various agencies, could help defend this civil right by writing to HUD that you oppose their proposed new rules. A number of fair housing advocacy groups have come together to help get the word out to the public and to help people craft their statements. And they've created a website called Defend Civil Rights, and it's defendcivilrights.org up there. And on that website, they describe the issue of disparate impact in detail, and then you can submit a comment directly from their website, and they give you a little crafting of how to do that. And HUD does take these comments seriously. They will look at them and analyze them, and they like them to be coming from, all different parts of the world, the United States. The more you can talk about how this kind of policy would affect individuals in this Fargo area, the better. So should this proposed rule go into effect, it will be devastating for our community's ability to fight discrimination. So HUD's accepting these comments through October 18th of this year, and we would greatly appreciate you joining with us to protect this vital civil liberty. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll get back to the disparate impact, because I would like you as individuals who are working to support human rights to please make comments on that site. As Angie said, the more comments, the better, right, for HUD to go through and to see how those impact our community. But before that, I just want to draw attention to our annual report in the folder that we gave you, and in there kind of talks about some of the work that High Plains does. On page 5, we have our advocacy mediation stories. 3 of the cases that we highlighted in the annual report do come from Fargo. Again, most of the cases that we see in North Dakota and in Fargo are disability-related cases, so people that are requesting reasonable accommodations and reasonable modifications to their living situation. I don't think that disability I do believe that disability is the biggest issue, but I also think that there are other issues that are other communities, other protected classes that are facing discrimination but are not reporting. The Native American community has high rates of discrimination, and yet people don't have faith in the system to complain. One of our fair housing Native American testers told me, well, when I came to college in Grand Forks, so I know it's Grand Forks, but he said when I came to college, people told me to expect to look at 2 or 3 apartments before he was accepted to live in a unit because of discrimination, but he never complained, and the people who told him to expect discrimination didn't complain. And so one of our biggest tasks as a fair housing center is first to get people to understand their rights and to feel confident enough to complain and to exercise those rights. And then secondly, if people don't, is to do our fair housing testing program, which is our secret shopper program, where we send somebody from a protected class and someone not from a protected class into, sort of simulate a housing transaction, whether it be rental or lending, and then to determine whether or not there's differential treatment. And so Angie talked about our transgender study that we did. Cody helped us with that. And but it's something that we're working on with our Native American community and New American communities. So anyway, those cases, the mediation cases, are, just, talking about the work that we do with residents. And then on page 7 are some cases that were actually filed. So when we try to mediate as much as possible, but sometimes we have to file cases because we can't, it falls through the mediation ability. And so the advocacy cases you can see there, and I will provide them a link to the website if you want them, so folks can read them and see them, in the public. So is there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
How are these tests conducted? Like, can you tell us a little more, like how you guys?
Sure. So all the tests, when we say 12 tests or however many tests that we did in that period, it's actually 24 because we do matched pair testing. We create and this is upheld by the Supreme Court, so it's completely legal and upheld as the only really true objective way to determine whether there is housing discrimination that occurs. So we'll create like a test profile. And so that person, we give them a different name, we give them different jobs, we say what their income is, we say what their credit rating is if it's a lending test, and then we say the scenario. Husband, wife, 2 kids, or woman with, 3 kids. And then that would be the protected class. Then the control would be very similar, slightly less qualifications. So maybe the job income is a little bit lower, maybe the credit rating's a bit lower, but then we would, use that and compare the treatment. So they go in, simulate a rental, opportunity, ask questions, and then they record or write down all the information, write down whether or not they got to see the same amount of apartments, that kind of thing. And then we analyze them.
And first of all, thank you for coming and presenting.
Thank you.
And I have a question about the landlords.
Yes.
And you train some landlords, but in the past, even up to right now, and a lot of landlords still, before they rent to you, they check your income. Must have at least over 2,500 you have to make, or 3,000. Mm-hmm. And some of the people, some of New Americans or some of the low-income families, they don't make that much, and they won't be able to rent an apartment. So, and we feel like that is not fair housing in a way that, even though they have. So have you talked to that about the landlord, and what is their response?
Yeah, so if a policy is, if a landlord has a policy that is objective across the board, then it very much, it can be legal, right? But perhaps, Angie was talking about the disparate impact, perhaps it does have a disparate impact, right? Maybe if the credit rating is, is somebody who just came to this country, wasn't able to develop a credit rating because of the history or because of a religion, because not having credit is part of a religious practice, then it could have a disparate impact, and that's why that rule is so important to comment on. But yeah, so we haven't talked to anyone, we haven't specifically talked to landlords about that, but that is something that we do see.
Michelle and Angie, again, thank you for the information and work that you do in the state. On page 7, when you talk about cases being filed, do I assume that when mediation doesn't work, are they almost always filed then with the North Dakota Department of Labor and Human Rights? Is that the...
Right, so they either go to the North Dakota Department of Human Rights. We can also have the option of filing them, or we can file a lawsuit in state or federal court.
What has been generally putting you on the spot maybe, but what has generally been the response from the Department of Labor and Human Rights?
Right, so many of the we have had a few cause cases recently, but it's challenging for us, yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious if you have accumulated some sort of a directory of problematic landlords? My first question.
Oh, yes, yeah. I mean, we don't have a directory of problematic landlords that are on like a website, public website, but we do have an extensive database that we gather information.
Evidentiary-based?
Right, yeah.
Actually driven?
Yeah, right. So we do that through complaints. So we have a tip line that actually just opened, and that's because we found in our Bismarck community where there is a high population of Native Americans, we found that they were not reporting. And so we said, well, but they had these stories to tell, they had all these experiences of discrimination. So we said, we've created an anonymous tip line that you can go ahead and put your information in, tell your story anonymously, and then we're able to then follow up. So we always, whenever we get a complaint or an intake, we'll always, follow up with a test, usually with a test, through our testing program.
So my next question, tagging onto that, is if there are problematic landlords and if folks like you are aware of them, what do we do when we see some of these same developers or landlords or property owners coming to the city and ask for special assistance or incentives or tax breaks or variations in zoning and planning, if we also, on the other hand, maybe don't know how they're treating some of their tenants?
Right.
I think that should be connected.
Yeah, I agree. I've been trying to work with a lot of, trying to reach out to as many landlords as possible. When they do get federal money, like home money and CDBG money, there's all sorts of other fair housing obligations that they have. And I do know that several companies in Fargo weren't aware of those obligations, and so we ended up filing a complaint on behalf of a client who was discriminated against, and they were fined quite heavily. So I agree, maybe some way that we could make that, because they do sign, when they get the home funds or they get the CDBG funds, they do sign, a contract to say that they're going to uphold these. But, honestly, I don't know if they're, purposely discriminating or just they don't know, right? They just may not know what the real obligations are. And so, getting them educated and following up.
And ignorance is bliss at
Right,
times.
yeah, I know.
I guess my question, we have some developers who get hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of tax breaks.
Right.
And I would just be stunned if I found out, or I'd like to know, if those folks getting these tax breaks are problematic for the tenants, because 60% of our people almost live in apartments.
Right.
So we have to protect our people. Mm-hmm. So however we can get to the point where if there are problematic landlords out there, and if on the other hand they're coming to us for special treatment, that should be a criteria for measuring what treatment we give them, or breaks or incentives, or how we get them to cooperate with. That's just one.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to connect.
And we might watch
happy
who's going through our tax exempt review committee.
Yes,
Who
yeah.
the businesses are, and a lot of times they're LLCs. We don't know who the owners really are.
Right.
It's some other entity, but really it's just,
We do a lot of research on that, absolutely.
And I'll be brief. One last question
Yeah.
is and I know the state tried to address the topic of registries. I think Grand Forks has a registry. I'd be curious if you have experience with rental registries and what we could do here in Fargo to get a registry that would work legally and help with your efforts and with our people.
I don't have any experience with registries at all. So,
Thank you.
always interested to explore ideas.
Your questioning, Commissioner Strand, indicates that there might be some greater transparency that goes on, or some kind of connection when our entities do receive these requests. It seems like that would be the time that inquiry could be made.
Wouldn't that be a nice element to add to the criteria of whether or not somebody is qualifying for these really substantial financial breaks? Is we're going to advocate for, One of the other criteria is you're going to treat your people well. And another topic I hear way too often from people is how they don't get their deposits back from landlords. But these little things are important.
Yep.
And Mr. Chairman, and if I just follow up with the answers you gave about landlord, and even though like is a cross, you know, but is a problem that affecting everybody, and a lot of in the low income families. So, and as you guys are in fair housing, do you consider that a discrimination? And second question to follow up with that is, and also can a landlord and ask you to vacate your apartment, you know, in the middle of your lease or after in the end of your lease to vacate without any reason? I don't want to lease you to just go without any reason. Can they do that too?
So I am not an expert on landlord-tenant law. We do fair housing, and we do get a lot. Probably half of the calls that we get are landlord-tenant issues, and I think it's. I know it's an issue that I've brought up a lot. We need more stronger laws for tenants in North Dakota, in Fargo. I mean, I absolutely believe that that is something that is creating poverty, perhaps creating homelessness. I agree with that. So, unfortunately, poverty is not a protected class. So it could fall under disparate impact, but it doesn't fall under the disparate treatment part of the law. But yeah, I absolutely believe. I mean, there's a couple of people that are facing homelessness right now in Fargo that we're working with who, would benefit from, an attorney to go with them to eviction court. So we're doing the best we can, but we're advocates, not attorneys. So.
Thank you. Mature.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Yeah.
After you are done with all the testing, do you confront the landlord or let them know that whatever they're doing is wrong?
Yeah, we do. Sometimes we bring it up to them. Sometimes we just file complaints to try to get a systemic change. Some of the problems that we see with landlords is that if we just mediate one-on-one, because we send a letter, a letter with our letterhead on it, they'll just say, "Oh, yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll do. That person's fine. We can get through it." But they don't, they're not making the systemic change that we need to see. We need to see a policy change. So if somebody is discriminating, we need to see it in writing that there's a policy change. So yes, we do confront the landlords.
Great, thank you. Two things that have come from this, and you may, if you want to go back to the slide, but one was a request about making comments on the change of policy. That the deadline is coming up really quickly. It's the 18th of October, and our next meeting is October 17th. So, and yet I recognize we may not have had a chance to look at that, although I have a great deal of respect of what your requests and what it would be. But I'm just wondering if we could, as a body, at least set in motion our intent to respond to this change and have something put forward that we can maybe ask staff to take the lead in writing something after looking at this webpage. So what I'm asking is would there be a motion for this body to, as Fargo Human Relations Commission, that we would in fact respond to this change in policy, in commenting to HUD about that? I personally feel like we need to. This is much difficult to begin with without making it more difficult for people to get proper housing. So, do I have a motion that we move forward on this?
So moved.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Second.
Second, Mature. Any discussion on this motion? We don't have a statement to vote on today, but I guess we would have one shortly.
And I can help draft that, and I can get your comments about, we can put those in, because that is a disparate impact issue that we can address in those comments.
Thank you, with your assistance. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. And if there's anybody else interested, Commissioner Strand, would you be interested in us having a conversation after, going forward about the legitimate questions you have about the connecting?
I wouldn't mind that.
Okay.
We need to get that on our radar.
Is there anybody else I would be interested in having a conversation with you?
And some of
Anybody
you
else?
folks,
I'll be interested too.
Okay, Abdulwali. So,
maybe Adam's a good housing expert.
excellent.
Yeah, absolutely, because disparate impact, actually, you work on the take 5, right? So that's a huge criminal background check issue, right, with people trying to find housing. And HUD has recently, based on the disparate impact rule, HUD has created guidelines to allow people, to have properties, housing authorities, et cetera, look at people on a case-by-case basis instead of using blanket criminal background policies. That will go away if this rule is rewritten.
I do have a question, unless you want to move on. So I was looking at the definition of disability on here, and it says physical or mental impairment.
Yes.
Can you define mental impairment?
Yeah, it's very broad. So the Fair Housing Act is an incredibly broad definition of disability. So it includes alcoholism, it includes history of drug abuse. So all that is included in disability. So as well as, anything that would impair someone's ability to enjoy housing.
So could one make an argument that if their felony on their background is there because of addiction or alcoholism and they were still turned away, they could make an argument that they're being discriminated
Yes,
against?
absolutely. They could do a reasonable accommodation request to take into account that they have a disability and that their record should not be part of the application process.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Michelle and Angie, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for inviting us.
A vital conversation to have. And I just want to mention that Michelle Ridds is also on the North Dakota Advisory Committee to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. And that's a whole nother conversation for another day, but perhaps we can have you back to talk about that body that exists in our state. So
I would love to. Yep.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. I was remiss. I always want to make sure that we have the staff that are so vital in working with us introduce themselves too. So at this point, could I have staff introduce themselves to the group?
Sure. Nicole Crutchfield, Planning Director.
Catelyn Christie, Assistant Planner.
Miranda Wolf.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move the agenda into public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the commission today? All right, seeing none, we're going to move into sponsorship updates. And one of the things we do is we do have a modest amount of monies that we can decide on how to distribute. And we had two entities that received money last month, and really pleased to have Gotti from the Dakota group was one of the recipients, and just was going to share with us what occurred with the money received. So if you want to just take the podium over there. Welcome, Gotti.
I just want to introduce myself. My name is Gadi Edward. I'm Executive Director of Tobacco Group Organization. I appreciate the effort the city give it to us to impact our community. We get $250. The projects we're doing is back to school event. Usually that project started in 2016 up to today. What we do, usually we have to, on summer programs, we have to bring our kids to teach them, to show them their culture. So during that time, we continue to do it up to today. But there is a lot of challenges, but we didn't focus on the challenges we're facing, but we love it because our community, they love the culture. So, and then we're trying to modelize, to do it, and then to engage other communities to come and then to share with us, to be with us, those they want to help their kids to learn about their culture. So we come up with a plan. The plan we come up, and then we work with that plan. I believe we need more effort, and then the plan can be successful. What is the new plan? We do it differently. In the building, we rent it, we want to modelize it, remodel it, to change some other things inside, and then can feed all the communities in Fagu-Morehead area. They can come in and then teach their kids, and then the end, we can come together when our kids go back to school, and then we can just socialize together. What the changes we need, and then our project to be successful, we work with landlord owner, and then we're trying to make some changes. The kitchen have to be inside there, and then the bathroom have to be more, and then those they want to teach their kids, and then they can come, and then they can start to teach their kids inside over there, and then we have to make that place to be our center for events. So we're trying, and then some people, they have a faith too. They come in, and then we're trying to put all those kind of things together, and then we can see the effort we do. We put timeline, it's going to be from 2020 up to 25. That building have to be change other things, and then from there we can share with other communities. Because Tudako's goal is to build a sustainable community of help, community of love, community of share. If there is something, we get it outside over there, we have to put it in a center, and then all those new Americans can share. Love, we have to go out, show our love to others too, with help. That is Tudakos means. Tudakos means the person helping other people. I built Tudako in Episcopalian faith. The teachers with the faith, you have to go around, help everybody. So that's why, once again, I appeal for city to join hand with us, because we alone, we cannot make it. But if we are as a team, I believe that place can be for all new Americans community. They can go over there, and then back they can pay, they're going to pay, it's going to be low, then they go outside. If they have their special events, and then they have birthdays. They have all those, if they go outside over there, the payment is high. But if they come in a center, I believe the payment going to be more low, and then they can enjoy it. If you have question, or you want to know more about Tobacco Group, we are available in the place which is 15 South, 21st Street. We located over there. We have been going around to help our communities with the food. Those, they didn't drive. Those, they have problems. We have to go, we are partner with food bank to take food to deliver for them. So if you know somebody, you need help, we can be there to help our community.
Thank you,
In
guys.
Canada, in Fargo, Point Head area.
We obviously had a very small part in this really huge vision, and we appreciate you sharing your vision today. And perhaps we can have you come back and talk more about your vision. That would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
It sounds like a very beautiful vision going forward. So thanks for being with us today. I think we had another acknowledgement too, Kathleen, from another gift that was, or not a gift, but.
Yes. So you also recently sponsored the North Dakota HIV Awareness Walk, and heard back from Christopher, one of the organizers, and he said the event was successful. There was a media presence and lots of new individuals. He said the weather kind of dampened attendance. However, they're excited for next year, and they're going to start earlier with planning, and they're going to increase the attendance. So, yeah.
Thank you. It's kind of nice to know what kinds of impact we have with these modest amounts that we are distributing in our community. I'm going to move into point number 7, and I think, Nicole, you were going to lead us into this. We do have a new year, terms of office and so forth, and so take it away, Nicole.
All right, thanks, Barry. Yeah, I have a couple options to present to you today, and you may or may not be ready for action or might want discussion, so I'll just lay it out. Basically, in summary, we have a couple governance items to talk about besides our bylaws, and that includes our executive committee and our elections. So in summary, as part of our reorganization about 2 years ago, we've reorganized basically all of the city, and including the planning department. And as planning director, I've been asked to, by our administrators and commissioners, to kind of really hone in on our mission and vision and purpose. And as you know, we've been going through that strategic planning process. That's led us along the way. And the two items I'm going to bring to you today, one is related to our executive committee. And so, as you know, in the past, for some of you who are new, you might not know this, but our executive committee has been 4 members in the past, and we've met kind of about 2 weeks prior to the actual agenda. And with Paul's retirement, but resignation, he was our vice chair, that led us into an opportunity to discuss not only looking for a vice chair person, but also kind of the intention of our executive committee, and his absence is missed at the executive committee level. And so we started talking a little bit about our executive committee with Barry a couple weeks ago, and this is really the only board of our 13 boards and commissions that has an executive committee, other than a chair and vice chair. And so as a staff and resources to support an extra meeting to talk about business outside of the board meeting is a little burdensome. And so what I'm actually requesting is if we could kind of think about that executive committee structure and the intention of that executive committee and its purpose. If it's to set the agenda and the upcoming items, we can talk about that process. If it's to talk about strategy, then perhaps that strategy of kind of our work plan items, then perhaps that's maybe more intentional scheduled meetings related to certain topics, or reaching out to Barry directly or staff directly. And we want, first and foremost, we want everybody to feel like the process is transparent. And so whether it's to talk about strategies for this board and commission, we can have separate work plan meetings, et cetera. So what I'm trying to say is at a staff level, and don't take this the wrong way, we're not sure how productive the executive committee meetings are for a staff business component. For camaraderie building, team building, and workshop development, strategy building, absolutely, they're very important. But do you need staff's presence as part of that? I'm thinking you probably don't. And so, but if I'm mistaken, I wanted to open that up for discussion, and you're all hearing this for the first time, so I also want to give you time to think about it, and we can add this as an agenda item later as well. So I'll kind of stop with that point and go on to the vice chair and officer discussion. So in June, every year, we're supposed to appoint our new officers. And we did not do that this year, and instead Paul resigned. So, and I should say, Paul, if he happens to be watching this, resigned reluctantly. He just got overcommitted with work, and so he would, I know very much in spirit, would want to be here. And so and to acknowledge all his hard work there. So as any case, typically, again, with our other boards and commissions, we have a nominating committee. And it dawned on us that we haven't really talked about that process with you before in the Human Relations Commission. And so we have a couple of options. If one, staff can act as that de facto nominating committee if you'd like this year, or if you're, and if there's some members in our committee today that might be willing to step up as vice chair and have already thought about it and willing to commit, we can have that discussion today. Or if you'd rather have that discussion offline with Barry and or other city staff as a de facto nominating committee, we can do that and have our election next month. And so those are kind of two questions. One, maybe open up discussion on the executive committee structure, and two, open up discussion on if anybody's ready to nominate themselves for or someone else as part of a vice chair level. We're kind of in a gap right now. So like, for instance, if Barry wasn't to be able to show up, we don't really have someone that could operate in that vice chair without kind of a de facto. We would probably lean on Rachel as kind of our past chair as part of that. So in any case, I'll just stop there and open it up or let Barry open it up for discussion.
And I would do that. And just to clarify too, the two positions are for a one-year term each time. So technically, we are looking to fill the vice chair, but we would also need to take action on who the chair is going forward as well.
Correct.
So, but in light of what the kinds of things that Nicole has shared with us, and maybe I'm going to flip them around, that we'll talk about the vice chair position initially. Any reaction to that? Either is somebody willing to be saying I'm interested in having that role, or wish to nominate someone else, or do you think we need a more intentional nomination process before the meeting occurs? Response.
I think what you said last, which is we need a more intentional process than to just, I think it's something that needs to be thought about and taken seriously. So my recommendation would be to table it until the next meeting, the actual election.
Okay.
Or should I make that a motion?
You could.
I do make a motion to table the election of officers until the next meeting so that we can give it a more in-depth process.
I mean, a nominating process.
Nominating process.
To that. Okay, is there a motion? Is there a second?
And since I'm also one of the executive committee too, I will second that.
Okay.
I need to seriously thought about it.
Okay.
So I will second that motion.
All right. Do we have any conversation or discussion about that?
I would just agree with that, and mostly because I think if you are making the commitment to be a vice chair, I think it should almost be done with the intention of moving into the chair position, just so we do have that flow of knowledge going through the executive committee, and so to be, cognizant of a commitment.
Thank you. Spoken from experience. All right.
Mr. Chair, I have just one question. Some people have include like the former chair, so you have that continuum. You might just put that on your consideration list of having the current chairman, the vice chair, which hopefully will grow into chair, and maybe the former chair, just so you have that history and continuity. Just a thought.
Thank you. The other issue then that Nicole brought forward to us is the continuance of the executive committee.
And maybe one quick, while you're still on that topic, if I may interrupt, could we, I know we had talked, at least Barry and I had talked about Rachel maybe serving as that nominating committee. And so if you're okay with that, I don't know. And if you are, so that we're ready to act next month, if we are ready, I don't want to push anybody, but if you are interested in that vice chair position, or chair position, or interest, I would encourage you to form a nominating committee, and often a nominating committee is one person. But I guess I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, so that's just a suggestion from staff.
And I would definitely be happy to do that. Or if anyone's interested, feel free to talk to me, because I know, if you want to discuss the obligations of it, the time commitment, what you're looking at, yeah, depending on.
All right. So we have a motion to defer action on officers with the Fargo Human Relations. And we've set a process in place here. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Again, so the conversation about the executive committee, and like you said, this was something that you and I have talked about. We haven't really necessarily engaged the other current members going into the other current executive committee members is Abby Wally and Cheryl. My one response was that I did note that there is a bit of redundancy in terms of having a meeting before the meeting. And so I think it's something worthy of discussing, that we're not just doing this out of habit, but we are really intentional about it. So any other responses, particularly those who are currently on the executive committee, to the idea of discussing whether or not to go forward with having this body? And you've been on that, maybe everybody who's been on the commission for any length of time has served there. Any reactions? Otherwise, I would suggest we maybe circle back and talk about that next week or month.
I agree that we need to put some thought into it, just like we do in the election of officers. Okay. And part of it is maybe there are times when we don't necessarily need an executive meeting, but there are other times that we do need a steering body, to look at where we're going and what we want to do, to bring up topics that are pertinent, so that we can have an idea about them before we come into this meeting here.
All right. So shall we just, I don't think we need a motion on that on that one, but we'll just continue that till next month. Thanks, Cheryl, for your comment. Any others? I don't want to shut down. Okay. All right. As long as you're out there, are you gonna help us with the next item, Nicole, which is the bylaws?
Sure, either Catlin or I. Did you want me to?
Yes. I will defer to staff.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just invite Catlin up here so we can team do this.
So, yep, in your packets you have both the ordinance and the bylaws, which are separate, and we didn't get any comments about what you all wanted to see for edits on the bylaws. However, we did sift through some other commission's bylaws, and we added in text that is sort of just standard best practice to have in your bylaws. So that's what that, I don't know if it's green in your packets, but that's what the faded different colored text is just additions from the last time's version.
So maybe just to bring up a couple points of edits. One is we'd probably have to take this one as an ordinance change, but as a rule of practice, we now have 2 sitting members on the Human Relations Commission who are not residents of Fargo, from what we understand. And which is okay, but to make it kind of more standard in policy is looking to make that comment of, and this would require a city ordinance change, at least 7 of the sitting members shall reside in Fargo, and any non-resident member should have a significant connection to the city of Fargo. And recognizing that the reach of the Human Relations Commission, in particular, all of our boards and commissions reach beyond city limits, and we're very subject-oriented type of topics. And so we do know in time, there's periods of time where we need members of our, certain expertise that maybe coincidentally live in the metro area and not in Fargo specific. So a way to kind of make that compromise with the administration office is seeing if it like kind of a super majority, if you will, living in Fargo. So that's kind of on the first page on the city ordinances, and maybe just to walk through the bylaws real quick. On the membership, again, I'm really, and I want to emphasize this again, part of my job I'm kind of caught in a hard spot, and I'm going to ask you to ride along that hard spot with me of standardizing all of our boards and commissions. And so I'm being charged to do that by our administration and our city commissioner. So I know we don't like change, but I'm going to go ahead and propose some of these things, and that is definition of chairperson, vice chairperson, term of officers, a definition of our city commission liaison and their role, and also our Fargo police officer, and then kind of including a conflict of interest. And last and foremost, this is a little unique, but it is standard practice for our office, is how do we prepare an agenda? And so that idea that if you have an item or idea, we want to make this really transparent. So again, not leaving it for the executive committee, but if you have something you want to bring forward to the board and you don't know what to do with that information or that knowledge, being able to reach out to Barry as your chair, and being able to reach out to Catlin, me, or Tia as a staff person, you don't need to wait to do that. And so bringing that forward, and then we can add that to the agenda and then publish that. The problem is we actually are we're already working on next month's agenda. And so if you have topics and areas that you want to present forward, reaching out. And so we have a 10-day limit on when we would like to be basically seeking for agenda items, and then publish that agenda no later than 5 days prior to the meeting. And so that's, we went ahead and documented that in the bylaws so everybody understands that process. And again, we want to make, this isn't a staff-driven agenda, this is a board-driven agenda. And so most of the times we're looking for agenda items, I'm just going to put that out there. And so, so as part of that process, and want to make this as robust of a dialogue as possible. So we understand you're seeing this for the first time, and so again, if you're not ready to act or want edits to make, just let me know. Let us know.
So any questions in first glance at again, we have both the bylaws, which we have determined that we can approve on our own. I think there was some confusion at one point that we needed to run these past the city commission, but that's been clarified. That
correct,
we can approve.
that was an error.
And then at the same time was the reflection. So I am open that if individuals would like to have a chance to study this a little bit more, we've been without bylaws for about 18 years, so what's another month? But if there's if there's comments, questions at this time, otherwise I would take a motion, or we could continue. What would be your preference?
I don't doubt that the changes are for the best, but I'm a self-proclaimed special learner, so I think I need more time, personally.
Thank you. Is there a consensus with that? All right. Let's, I don't think I'll take a motion on that. We'll just thank you for the comments, but then make sure to read through it and let us know if there's
Yeah,
anything
so I'm going to give you guys 5 days because our agendas, our packets are due here, will be due here in
thanks.
about 2 weeks.
A deadline. I worked well. Thank you. Okay, so one point of order, and maybe I should just do this. Rachel asked whether or not, in terms of her authority of being the nominating committee, I think what I would do is entertain a motion to approve Rachel as the nominating committee for chair and vice chair for to bring that back. So can I have a motion to approve Rachel as our nominating committee?
I'll make a motion to approve Rachel as the.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I'll
We have-
second it.
Second? Do we have any conversation? Any vetting? Hearing none? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. And if anyone is interested, I would really appreciate if you would reach out, so it doesn't get to the point where I have to really find everybody. And I know there are people who are interested and who would be great in the roles. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Staff report, we had talked about, and I think we're gonna, next time, we are gonna flip so that we don't always feel like when we're talking about this important aspect of strategic planning, we're bumping up at the end of the meeting. But you're ready to talk, visit with us, Kathleen, and some work you've done on the strategic planning. So we're running a little bit over the hour, but I would like Kathleen, with the work that she has been putting in on this, to share with us a presentation on our strategic planning process.
Sure, yeah. So you have a handout from me, and you'll see in the back there's a chart, that colorful chart. And essentially what I did was I went through those strategic planning sessions that you conducted this past spring, and I looked at all the big ideas that you had proposed and then tried to sort of glean what bigger goals that they're connected to. And so these are the 7 buckets that I kind of came up with that all related to your.
Correct?
Yep, exactly. That all related. And so, again, we're super open to discussion on these. This is a first draft, and we have lots of ideas for the various objectives and strategies that could fall into that column too that you all came up with during those sessions. But I think a great starting point would be to clarify what goals we're actually all working toward. So, in the matter of time, feel free to give Nicole or myself a call, or Barry, or think about it for a little bit and come up with any edits or feedback that you have, because again, this plan is dependent on your input. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So questions. The challenge for those of us who participated is digging into our memory banks to remember I remember the great rich conversations we had and how this landed. For our 2 members would be the first time to look at it. So, but hopefully this will be the basis to really discuss it, and knowing that we're going to be going from left to right to be putting in real specific items and action steps. But any questions for the first read of the big goals that have been identified here, the 7?
I think maybe just, Barry, just as a reminder, the front page, Catlin kind of skipped that, but the front page of that handout is a summary of the spring meetings. So why does HRC matter, and what are the priorities of HRC? There's some additional slides. If you guys don't have access to those, we can make those available for you again to use as internal reference. And maybe just to paint that future vision of how we would work on this. This would start to paint a 2020 work plan. And as part of that, there could be, committees related to these types of topics, and subcommittees related to these. And so one of the things that we didn't get to in our spring meetings, and then when we tried, we kind of combusted, is determining priorities. And so, so I think it's really important as a body to figure out what our priorities are. We might have individual priorities, of course, but as a body, where are those priorities? Because that's going to help drive staff on how we best support you. So I'm talking about it very selfishly, to figure out how we can best support you in your work. And so when you read through these, kind of maybe think through the role of HRC and your priorities, and we can schedule a kind of a work group meeting, or retire to the Meadowlark room if you would like to unpack these in more detail.
All right. Any more questions for Kathleen or Nicole as we move into the strategic planning? Hearing none, is there any other business for the good of the group? Is there?
I just have a question. Typically, you find a moment to acknowledge previous members. I know they worked, I think we had it on the last agenda for Dave Lanfer and Paul. Maybe at some point, however you do that, we just want to make sure they're thanked, or acknowledge them. And I don't know if there's plaques or how we do that these days, but
Yeah, the mayor's office does that directly.
they do, okay.
Yeah, and then we did that personally,
In our June meeting.
through our
we-
meetings.
We did
yeah.
acknowledge their,
Good, thank you.
yeah, thank you, though. We cannot thank enough. I just wanted to not necessarily commission business, but I just want to let people know that there is I think, a significant event coming up in the state, that the first weekend in October, there's a LGBTQ plus second annual North Dakota Summit, which is being held in Mandan. People from within the community and allies are coming together for education and organizing. So I would just ask anyone that knows anybody who would be interested in being a part of this in Mandan to let me know. That's coming up before our next gathering. Is there any other announcements or?
A question,
Yes.
if I may. Based on previous year timelines, we would be talking about MLK by now, and I know that there have been some changes with how it's planned, so I don't know if someone, staff could update us, or if it's something to have for the next meeting.
Yeah, we can start to initiate those. We've started talking with Reach again because I think they were agreed upon that they were really helpful last year with smoothing out operations. So they've started thinking about it. Obviously, you all have started thinking about it. It'd be awesome if we could tie it back into one of these big goals just to really drive the intention and purpose of the event. And I think we could start sending out polls for when you're available for the planning committee.
So maybe we should take a poll. Who is interested? I know, Letitia, you've been a vital part of that planning committee. Are you interested in being a part of that going forward?
I'm not sure, but I'm interested. Yes.
Do we have any other people that are expressing an interest at this point? So as Kathleen starts putting together this meeting, that she would know who to call.
I'd be willing to be on the committee again. Also, I do think just for the request for nominations for timing, we should look into putting that request out as soon as possible, knowing when we need to get those in order to make the videos. Time is usually of the essence, and starting at the end of September with that. Or if anyone here knows of any youth, adult, or group who should be nominated, please make that nomination.
Great. So, thank you. We'll proceed with putting the planning logistics together. That, yeah, January will be here before we know it. So, thank you for bringing that up, Letitia. Anybody else that'd like to be on that committee?
It's a great way to dive in for our newer members.
And it's changed immensely with actually having professional event planners being a part of it. I mean, it's not so incumbent on the members to do all the work.
We'll send out some information so that you have an understanding of time commitment and what's included and activities and schedules, et cetera. So, yeah, with Reach Partners, we're kind of already going. We're a little distracted with Indigenous, maybe a plug right now. Indigenous Peoples Day is coming up, and so we're a little distracted on that event. And then, but we're quickly programming. In fact, Catlin and Reach Partners has a meeting today on MLK. So.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
I could, I would like to hear from Hamida where you were and how things are with you and what you learned, because I know you were gone around the world. If you don't mind, I know we're running late, but I'd sure love to hear a little update from you, Hamida. And welcome back.
Is this on? Well, thank you, John. I've been in Kenya, and all I did was eat and sleep. So, yeah, I went for a family visit. My mom wasn't feeling well, but she's fine now. So, yeah, I traveled the country. Kenya is a big country and beautiful, and I did some human rights. I have been to the Kenyan Parliament a couple of times to address some issues from my hometown, and then I'm back here. That's all I did.
Well, thank you and welcome back.
Thank you.
Abduwali?
Yeah, I have a couple announcements, and first of all, there's a new American soccer tournament that started going on, and if anyone knows, they're looking for a referee, like soccer referee. If you guys know anyone who would like to volunteer, help out with referee work, and let me know, please. And second announcement is in Somali Community Development Organization, they have a new location. They open a center, and they are doing an open house on October 3rd, 5 to 7, and all of you guys are invited. So if you have more questions, you can reach out to me.
Would you send the information to the
I will,
office?
yes, I will send the information
Okay,
to you
and then
guys.
that could be sent out to us.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And again, congratulations, HRC, for having 100% attendance. Welcome to our new members. Welcome back, Hamida, and the meeting stands adjourned.